Good beings. It's like Christmas morning.
This is Job Praise Whitewater, and I'm your host, Nick Turner, for the celebration of whitewater paddling and the legends who have shaped our sport. Job Praise Whitewater is brought to you by Kayak Session Magazine, the international whitewater magazine. This magazine is a true work of art. If you've never picked one up before, go to the local shop, find one, and look through, and you will be amazed at what the sport is doing right now. If you want to find out what the latest expeditions are going on all around the world, it's in Kayak Session Magazine in the news section. If you want to find out in-depth articles on the latest exploits of the very best paddlers in the world, it's in Kayak Session Magazine. The artwork, the photography is on another level from anything you've ever seen. The founder of Kayak Session Magazine, Toon, Philippe, anyone who's been in the industry very long knows him well and knows that nobody is more true to the sport. So if you want to support the sport, see what all the latest people are doing, and get the very best eye candy available on Earth in the sport of whitewater kayaking, then do yourself a favor, go to kayaksession.com and pony up some of those dollars, drink a few less PBRs, and get yourself a subscription. Your buddies will bring beer over to come read the magazine at your house. Kayak Session Magazine, the international whitewater magazine. All right, well, tales of whitewater heroism have been told around campfires in the western U.S. since the beginning of river running. Often the early days, Walt Blackadar was really an inspiration to a lot of western kayakers. And I think if you grew up a kayaker in the 80s, 90s in the western U.S., the person told stories around the campfire about the most is possibly Rob Lesser. He really defined a lot of the western whitewater path. Man, he's both on the legendary first ascent of the Stikine and pioneer of the North Fork, as well as a forefather and encourager of the rodeo and freestyle scene. So, man, he's really been a force of positivity in the whitewater world for decades. And I'd say certainly probably the premier legend of Western whitewater in our day and age from pre-internet days. So we have today Rob Lesser here from home in Boise, Idaho, who I think your home he's lived in. Have you lived in that home since birth, Rob? Or that
moved in at about 4.5. I have not lived here all the time, of course, off doing other things, but I have returned to it when my parents passed away, and so it's home sweet home for in the 7 decades. So
I think that says a lot for where your priorities lie, being who you are. So you grew up there in Boise area, and how did you first get into running rivers, or who was the first crew that really introduced you to it?
Well, back in those days, there were no crews. It was just as is often in life, one door opens and you see something of interest, and you embrace it. And in my case, I had had some outdoor experiences around here, just more or less fishing and getting out in the foothills and whatever. But when I went to grad school at the University of Montana, I got into climbing with what were they, the Western Mountaineers or something like that. Happened upon a fellow named Rob Erickson, who was about 3 years older than me. He'd been to Vietnam. He was just an engaging fellow. And he was from Choteau, Montana, and he and his brother had actually built a pole boat early on when they were kids. And so when he was in school at Montana, and he was my climbing partner, and he said, "Hey, you've got access through the uh, essentially the Cooperative Wildlife Outdoor Unit, which was the Craighead group, who the grizzly researchers, Frank and John Craighead. John primarily was there in Montana. Well, long and the short is Rob bought himself a fiberglass kayak. It just happened that across the Clark Fork River was a fellow named Lynn McAdams, and he was building I think it was called a Dufek kayak of all things. It was an urban and a Dufek, and Rob Erickson had just bought this kayak, and he said, "Don't you have access through the wildlife unit to rafts?" And I actually did. I had been participating in, there was a Clark Fork River race, and this was in the late 60s, 69 to be exact. And yeah, I can get that. I said, I just went out and bought this brand new kayak from Lynn McAdams across the river there, and I want to take it up on the Blackfoot. And so I said, well, okay, I'll get contact with this 2-man raft that I can probably row down there, although I had never run the Blackfoot. And so up we went. We get up to a place called Sealy Junction or whatever, and I think the creek, it's an inflow creek to the Blackfoot, and we take the kayak off, and he said, well, why don't you try that? What, you be the, just this is just a nice little, canal or whatever, it really little creek. And so I got into it, and for about a mile or so. Then we got into the main Blackfoot River and floated down a ways. And the thing was, I was instantly addicted. It was such a thrill, and the movement of the water. And one of the biggest things that appealed to me was, this thing's a suitcase. You can put all sorts of gear in here, and it's just off to the races. I mean, here we've been doing these up Blodgett Canyon and Kootenai Canyons and the Bitterroots. You're carrying 50 pounds of gear on your back with ropes and other things that are essential, and certainly backpacking gear if you were on a trip like that. And I just looked at that kayak and thought, wow, the river is going to do all the work here. And I was just appealed to. It was an instant, and I won't call it an addiction, but a fascination and a love of everything, what was happening in that boat. And the constant changing of the river, and what's in front of you, and your eyes are just looking around, making decisions, and it was from that point on. I was a kayaker, and literally 15 days later, I went across the street or across the river and talked to Lynn McAdams, and he made me my first yellow and white fiberglass boat, and that was the launch point. And but you come back to uh, people that influenced. I mean, except for this Rob Erickson, and we were absolute total neophytes together. Uh, there really was nobody else to influence us up there. I mean, Lynn McAdams was a kayaker, and he could show us some strokes and things like that. But basically, it was learn from the seat of your pants, and on you go. And the other thing that happened right then, this was early May or maybe late April, and we had this friend who was right below Marshall ski area. He had his a ranch down there. It was a family ranch, and it had a stock pond in there. I mean, it's just getting the runoff, and there was still snow up at Marshall, which was only a quarter mile away. And so we had wetsuits, and we went into that stock pond and basically had John Urban's book, and basically, oh, so this is how you do the roll, and blah 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 blah. And so we went through, kind of snapping our hips in the side of the docks and whatever, and then Erickson basically took a paddle. Yeah, go, grab or do some. I'm gonna learn this roll, and of course he floundered and ended up swimming. But that was our introduction, and literally it was by John Urban's book that we learned to roll, and the extended paddle roll was pretty much what we ended up doing right off the bat. But you more or less had to learn to roll then. It wasn't like Eastern things where you had lots of people teaching you strokes and other considerations. It was trial and error and trial by fire. So off we went.
And so then once that's amazing that, right? Your very first time, you're kind of like, I'm a kayaker. Because it's kind of that moment, right? I feel like in every kayaker's life when you're like, well, I'm a kayaker. I remember I had it in British Columbia after some amazing day at 19 years old or something, standing at the bottom of this waterfall. I was like, this is what I want to do. So that's amazing that it really happened for you day one.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think a lot of, and the thing about kayaking, whitewater kayaking, is that it either appeals to you or it scares the bejesus out of you. And, I've learned since that time that you either, I mean, that people are best taught by a stage here and a stage there in terms of just having them in a pool and getting out of the boat with no spray skirt on, then getting out of with a spray skirt. I mean, just so that fear factor in your head doesn't totally encompass everything. And I don't want to be in that boat anywhere to be seen. And certainly some people are set down the river with a spray skirt around them and a life jacket, and they don't know anything and no anticipation, and they feel entrapped when they flipped over, and just scares the bejesus, and they never come back at all. So yeah, trying to avoid that. But for me, it from that point on, I just and I did a lot of solo kayaking. I it was a strange summer. It was a summer of '69, and I had flunked my physical for Vietnam. I mean, and I passed three of them earlier, and suddenly this guy says you've got hernia possibility, and so you're unfit for military duty. And I had been working for the Park Service as a seasonal ranger up to that point, and I had not reapplied, knowing I was going to get drafted. And the world just opened up for me, and kayaking was a major part of that. And I split the summer writing my master's thesis up at Flathead Lake, and that was the entrance into the Glacier Park, or the rivers around there. And so I just started doing solo runs down rivers in the Swan Range and up by Glacier and whatever. And I look back on pictures of it, and I basically had this really bulky dry or wetsuit. I had no helmet and no life jacket. I mean, I got them fairly soon after, but uh, that's the pictures I've got from that era to start with. And but we did get safety conscious pretty quickly, and but homemade paddles, and it's just it was the early days of kayaking. And of you mentioned Walt Blackadar. He was a friend of Lynn McAdams, and Lynn had built boats for Walt, but Walt basically only started the year before in '68. Down in Salmon, he was an experienced rafter, but he had not kayaked until around then. And along the line, I think a year or two later, I did cross paths with him and did a salmon run, just the day section near him. And but basically, there were very few kayakers anywhere to be seen in western Montana, and and Walt did attract people in Idaho, but that was about it. So.
Yeah, he kind of brought it to the country, the whole ABC wide world of sports. So his contribution was almost the media part a lot. And
Yes, no, yeah, there's no question. As he evolved, the thing about and my impressions of Walt, and I did end up boating, uh, some significant runs with him. Is he was a showman. I mean, he attracted the spotlight. He was colorful. Here he was a doctor. I think he was in his probably his mid early no it'd be mid 40s at that point that I was boating with him, mid 40s up until basically he died. I had boated with him 3 weeks or 2 weeks on the South Fork of the Payette, and knew the exact situation that he ran into. We boated on uh, the lower South Fork and main Payettes, just so he was trying to get in shape for another of these ABC movies, which was down at Cross Mountain Canyon. Um, and I thought I told him about this log that basically was impinging the whole or most of the river, and that you had to be careful. There were actually a glue lamb beam, of all things, had fallen off a truck on the highway. And this is not where he died, but there were two impinging huge log situations. And so maybe he confused one or the other, but he basically just misread it with the water level. It was not real obvious, and washed up against it. And you know, logs are hazards, and that was you know his demise basically, which was very unfortunate. But a colorful character, had his own boating style, as everyone know. Or, most people who've seen the movies. He definitely had a big Iliad paddle and high braces and this, that, and the other thing. But bravado. He just characterized being out there and meeting adventure head on. So.
well, it's funny how kayaking, it's hard to do both, right? It's either this deep spiritual experience or kind of this showman experience, right? And it's hard to balance the two because it's what's so dangerous, right? You lose so many. And I don't know if you heard just recently about Chris Tully. He was pretty involved with AW, but he was about my age, kid, lives out in California, and it was same thing, a run they've done 100 times, and just had a log that was in there and didn't miss it, got caught, and those are the ones that hit me
Mm.
the hardest now because there was another one in California, but it's these guys my age, with kids, and like I sometimes struggle of should I stay in it, like this year I built back up and was running some class 5, and was pretty proud, and then I read that just 2 days ago about Chris. I was like, oh man, like as fun as kayaking is, being a father is a hell of a lot better. It's not
Yes.
doesn't even compare. And they would agree, right? And so those ones hit hard.
Well, no, I'm sorry to hear that. I had not heard that. Previously, well, the oh God, and I'm spacing on his name, but the fellow over in England, who was such a oh God, what
Brent
name?
Horton.
Yes, Brent Horton.
Uh,
No, I mean, it was such a shock and of course his media presence was so uh, out there, and he was such a seemingly likable guy. I mean, his personality came across as, gosh, this is an encouraging fellow. He's a role model. And
yeah,
but to hear about Chris, and no, I mean, quite frankly, and there's no question. I'm aged out. I'm certainly aged out on a lot of I mean, class 5 is, I stopped doing the North Fork at 63, and I'm now 79. So you can't help but read when a situation like you're describing happens. How old were they? How much? And you have to kind of figure in how much. had they been doing of late or whatever, what physical conditioning, but there's a cutoff point when you're in your 60s and certainly 70s and or future. Anyway, it is well suited for a younger person. But
63 and running the North Fork is far beyond what anyone would consider a suitable age for running the North Fork.
well, it's like everything in life. The more you are used to it and practice it, and I mean, basically, if I mean, when I was 63, I took a swim up there in golf course, and I had Ryan Casey and anyway, a couple of other really good boaters were with me, and I've swum twice on the North Fork, both in the same spot. One was in 1980 and one was in whatever 2000 something or other. And but I was very sorry to leave that environment because it was such a training ground. I mean, it's coming at you all the time. And obviously we grow very comfortable with it. The routes, where the waves are going to come. But my God, you're just brace, you boom, boom, whatever. And but when you are not, I got to the shore after in that swim and kind of started to get up and immediately went, whoa. I'm a lot tireder than I thought I was going to be after swimming. So I had to lay down for like 5 minutes and just catch my breath, reoxygenate enough in my body, and I just made the decision right at that point that look, this river is running 2,000. It's never going to be less powerful. Look at me. I am less powerful, and I am not in condition to be out here. So listen to, be smart. Don't just push your ego down that river. And so I basically walked away from it. But that was it. I basically walked away from my training ground and you know how I get in shape. It was that river, and so um, be smart. Don't overstretch it. And as exactly what you're saying about being a father is so much more important than being a recognized river runner or whatever. Although I've never been a father, so but it just there's no question. Life has its choices and balance. So
Yeah,
good on you.
Bryn hurt hard because he just really represented this new generation, right? The post generation of Rush and Tyler and Enel and Benny and all those legends, Like,
Yes.
he really represented this new. I was like, oh, wow, there's a new generation now. It had been 20, 15 years, right? And so, gosh, that hurt.
No. I have one thing that I have done in my advancing age or what have you is I look at. I mean, uh, perhaps I'm a videoholic, but because of things like the Stikine video with ABC, that was in 1981 is when they shot it, and it did not appear on television until 1984, and it was like a 15 to 16-minute show. It cost $250,000. There were two helicopters. There were four film crews that were two-man crews that were set down at different places. I look at that, and then I look at what's on television. I mean, you know what? There's Dane Jackson. There's Aniol. I respect them both. Aniol. He has. I just really enjoy his videos, especially up there on the Stikine, because although they're all pushing their own limits, and it's just like climbing Yosemite. Do El Cap in 2.5 hours free or something like that. They're pushing the limits, and I just saw Dane's video of he and Alex Voorhees doing the two in a day, two full runs in a day, and And I'm going, this is crazy, and whatever. So,
Well, look
I
at
mean, it's
that.
not. You
I
go
look at
ahead.
that gear from when that 16-minute shot. It's just amazing you guys were in the Stikine, and considering how much respect still, like Alec and Dane, like pretty much the two best kayakers in the world, still have for that stretch of river. So do you really remember when plastic boats came along, and how did that kind of happen, and what did you really go like, oh wow, we can do some different runs now, or
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, the North Fork of the Payette is a classic example. That was not the territory for a fiberglass boat. I mean, it just was. They were going to get beat up, and you're going to have so many repairs. Of course, I started in fiberglass, and then as soon as the River Chaser came out, I bought or I got one of those. I got it from Tulio Solano, his old reject boat, and then that damn boat broke. We're putting in with Walt Blackadder and his son and whatever on the Selway, and I had a yellow holoform, and Walt and I and somebody else had run the upper a little stretch down to Paradise, and evidently I'd broken the boat. So I'm putting on the day we're launching, and I get down about a quarter of a mile, and I realize I got a hole in this, or I'm taking on water, and ended up having to give up the whole run, uh, and go with Sue Blackadder to drive the shuttle. I walked the boat back up and out, but I did get a white holoform soon after that, and that was what I first ran the North Fork in. And it was in '77, and I would like to kind of set the record straight. There's been some around here. I've been given credit by a news guy who shot some video up at the well had we had talked uh, of doing the first North Fork, uh, connecting all the pieces on the North Fork, and actually, and definitely I won't claim that, but I basically did. I got together with a group from Kentucky, Bob Walker, Doc Bob, as we called him, and the Crunch Bunch, and we had been touring around for about 2 weeks doing things of the South Fork, Clearwater, the Lochsaw, up in uh, anyway, and a variety of other rivers. But they and it was more on their suggestion. Hey, I want to take a look at the North Fork of the Payette. And I had done the lower part previously, the lower five, but anyway, we were looking at the upper two sections, and we scouted them all. And then that day that we had gotten there, we ran and basically it was Bob and I that were doing this, route finding and this, that, and the other thing, and and so we ran the top five and then scouted completely the second half of it. But what happened to me is I had plastic surgery scheduled the very next day, which was a Monday at 6 a.m. down at St. Luke's in Boise. And so I was unable to participate with them. So they did run the middle section. And I recently have talked with Bob about this. And I guess they went on, or he did. I'm pretty sure it was he and three of the other guys, Bob Latter and Dennis Whitehouse, and I'm missing one. But anyway, that they ran down the lower five as well, so they would basically be the people that did a complete run. It was in segments, but they would have been the first ones to run it. And I don't want to claim that. And there's it is interesting that the older you get and the more of a reputation, and which I don't know how I'm looked at by the outside world or whatever, but it wasn't my intention to be a first descender with an eye on the by God, I want credit for this, that, or the other. My contributions as it evolved to the North Fork were much more long term of, well, getting videos shot almost immediately up there, and to build up the reputation, because we were under threat from Idaho Power to put that in tubes from top to bottom. And I fought it basically, and started the Idaho Whitewater Association and other things, but basically became a spokesman for, this is a grand training ground. This is a wonderful, this is like Yosemite, but it's right here in Boise, Idaho, or well, outside Boise, Idaho, but right here in Idaho. And this is where you train to go do things like the Alsec and the Susitna and the Stikine. This is, it's an exemplar whitewater resource, and we cannot put it in a tube. Well, the truth of that whole thing is Public Utilities Commission essentially said there's no need for it in this valley. So you can't build, you build your project. But, those kinds of contributions, and then just additional runs and run. I mean, I did hundreds of runs on the North Fork, and that anyway, and tried to bring attention to it, because celebrity saves things. And that's the North Fork. I want to be a celebrity, and it is. The North Fork Championships have just been phenomenal as to drawing attention. People drive by it on their way to McCall, and many people have seen it all summer long, and now it it should be recognized as a national resource of whitewater kayaking. And if it isn't, I'm really surprised. So, end of lecture number one, I guess.
The media always makes you look either a lot better than you are or a lot worse than you are. They never really, usually when you're on the upsurge, it's
Yeah,
like they make you look a lot better than you are, but then.
yeah. No, I mean, as far as like media, I mean, and that was another stringer tangent off that I was commenting on about the kids of today, and what you were. I just can't believe what is so easily available on YouTube. I mean, 2 days after it's been done. I mean, Dane and Alec, when they did their two top to bottoms on the Stikine in one day, and it was on there a week later. And I look at our ABC thing, and it was on 3 years later. And the learning curve that kids are going through, seeing all of that now, it is just, it's just, I admire it so much, the technology and what the kids are doing with it. And without question, their paddling ability. They're just light years ahead of us. So, and as you say on this Stikine, a Mirage I look back on my spray skirt, and basically it was just a bungee corded perception skirt. And sure as hell it was going to get knocked off. And, learned early on, before the cameras were even up there, that, yeah, well, and I guess there is some footage of me trying to put my skirt back on, but boats, I will say, are so much nicer to, we were talking about, of course, during my perception years, the dancer came on to the scene, and they said, well, it's got a lot of rocker. I'm going, it's got a lot of rocker? Are you kidding me? I mean, you look at the boats of today, and they've got like 8 or 9 inches, and they go off the waterfalls, and they're just skipping away from them. And it's really, I really enjoy what I am able to see on YouTube. And it's just amazing. I mean, a GoPro helmet cam. When we did it with ABC, it was a Gazap camera, and it weighed about 25 pounds, and it was strapped over with bungee cords, and it was just barely enough. uh, I mean, what did it shoot? 200 frames a second, but it only had film in it, and this was film, 16 millimeter, for I think 4 minutes or less,
Three
maybe
minutes.
just 2 minutes.
3 minutes for
Uh,
those
uh,
16 mil rolls. Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, no, it's just absolutely embarrassing, and hey, kids, enjoy what you got because boy, you are privileged with the technology of today.
Yeah,
So,
when we first remember getting our first maybe Whitewater movie our group owned, we were up at the Locksaw, one of those very first rendezvous. I think we were still maybe in high school, but Dan Gravier gave us this copy of Cavu Day. And man, right, we watched it
oh yeah.
well over 200 times, you know. Every day watched it.
No, I mean, and I've got a whole collection of, of VHS tapes, and like Rocky Rossi in the late '80s was putting together oh gosh, I can't remember the exact name of his business, but those videos, as technology improved, we uh, connected to it, and literally I've got Cavu Days in a box not too far from here. I mean, a few steps away. But it's so encouraging, and hey, that's how all of these sports evolve, is monkey see monkey do. And basically, when you've got somebody doing acting as, well, a beta, or a probe or whatever, and you can see it right there, and you understand that it's invaluable. I mean, you bring it into your, whether it's the memory bank or the autonomic motion bank, and incorporate that talent. And God, I see what they're doing on especially the Stikine is just been a showcase for whoa, an amazing amount of talented paddlers getting up there, and I've got to say I'm very proud of putting the Stikine on the map, and it basically, as something that's respected over the ages. I mean, it was not intended at all. And basically, I I do want to take ownership, because I'm not ownership of but planning that whole trip. I did the whole thing. I mean, and it sounds, I don't want to sound, it just, for 4 years, I studied that river, and then looped everybody in at the end. And but flew it, first I had to go to Vancouver to get hydro maps, because it was a proposed hydro project. That's why the name Site Z is there. That was a site, the dam site, basically, and there were to be two dams right in that whole process. And in 1981, when we did it, there was a very active camp there at Site Z, helicopters flying in and out, and drill holes, and the whole 9 yards. And once again, the importance, and for every sort of river conservation issue, you have to have, uh, it has to be in the public eye. They have to understand what's up there. And so that movie that was made, I was hoping certainly was going to come out earlier, so that it would do that, would say, hey, look, this is what you're missing down here in this canyon, because damn few people have ever seen it. But anyway, got maps from BC Hydro, got aerial photographs from the Geologic Survey up there in Canada, and studied those, then flew it with a fixed wing airplane in '77, and then just kept pushing, and evolved with the ALSAC, doing the ALSAC. Or, well, let me see. First, this is Sitna in '77, and then the ALSAC in 1980, and then was looking for another challenging project, or I mean, looking at the Stikine as something to try. And the kind of the weird backstory on all that is, Roger Brown, who was the filmmaker um, for ABC, basically. I mean, he was the one that usually came up with the ideas, and pitched the project to ABC, and then they off to the races. Well, he and I had sort of had a falling out. I had proposed uh, I went actually back to New York and hung around back there. I had proposed a BOBO first kayaking descent to them, and had passed through Colorado and talked to Roger on the way out. Well, and saying, look, I want to go propose this thing. Well, in the meantime, he had he had an Ama de Blanc and uh, some river in Nepal package. He had been talking to me about what river in Nepal to do, and I'd been doing research, but really hadn't come up with uh, exact. And in those days, there was nothing that had been done in Nepal, so it was an open book. And anyway, he and I, he felt that I was crossing his. He needed to project or present the BOBO. Anyway, we had a falling out, so I got dumped off of the Nepal project, and so we weren't exactly talking. And in the midsummer of '81, with the Stikine project, or with Stikine in my eyesight and whatever, he contacted, um, and literally the only guy that had signed on was John Wasson. That he was willing to go up there, and the rest, the California crew, as you call them, they kind of came on anyway. Near, let's just say they were lured by the lights of ABC, and that's Lars. I would say much less so. Lars was, but I had not boated with Lars, and Don had introduced him. But the long and the short is, Roger calls me out of the blue and says, or no, he doesn't call me. He calls Don, and Don calls me, and he says, I think you should talk to Roger Brown. They may be interested in doing this for ABC. And so anyway, I reluctantly call Roger, and this is like mid-July, and we're going to go up there at the end of August. And so Roger says, "Well, I think we'd be, I think the ABC's interested in blah 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 blah. And how about we fly up there tomorrow and take a look at this?" I'm going, tomorrow? Shoot. And that's what we did. I flew to Vancouver, then up to Whitehorse, and then back down to Dease Lake. We hop in a helicopter and we're flying through the guts of it. It's only flowing like 36,000 CFS and whatever. But and he says, "Yeah, you sure this is possible?" And whatever, blah blah blah. But and essentially, my whole decision was on those maps. I knew what the gradient was. I knew what the flows would be, and they weren't going to be what in August, late August, what they are right now below you. But it looked totally intimidating. But that was it. That's how it evolved. And then anyway, we got together as kayakers, and I mean, most of them didn't have an idea of what was in there. And for us, in long mirages and what have you, in that day and age, and the unknown, it was a learning experience, and it was also a learning experience. I mean, the ABC sort of called the shots, more so than, and as and that's why I went back. Went back more, or six, no, how many? Four other times, I think. That's I can't even remember exactly, but yeah, it was, it stretched our limits. There's no question, as far as the river challenge and what have you. And but anyway, uh, any questions on that one?
Well, so was it you who kind of said, I want this crew to come with me, of Lars and Bob and them, or was it ABC kind of got this crew together and said, this is who's
No,
coming?
no. They basically, I mean, I knew Don because we'd done the BOBO. We did end up doing that in February of '79, I guess. So I knew Don at that point, and I'd done other things, and uh, so we knew Don, but John and I. are kind of a core. I mean, he was my reliable partner, and I think Don had recommended Lars, but I had, as I said, not voted with him previously. But he is a manimal. He's just really reliable. And then, I mean, uh, and Don was in on it, but very kind of wishy-washy. It depended on whether cameras were going to be rolling, and the same basically with Rick. Well, Rick had done some study of it, so he knew a little bit about it, but they were superior boaters of that era. I mean, they really, we just knew we had a really solid crew. But yeah, it sort of fell together. And at this point I can't exactly remember, but yeah, it was um, as I well the yeah. And anyway, it did come together. Uh, it was an interesting experience, but there was a bit of a heavy foot put on by ABC, and exactly, hey, we're here to make a movie, and we're not here to just. And of course, we weren't trying to spend money or whatever. I mean, my whole intention was just let's run this river. It's a hell of and as my I my reasons for running rivers are primarily the place, the river itself, what kind of a challenge it presents, etc., and the people. And so it is important to have all three of those things together. And you certainly don't want an incompatible crew. And certainly, I would say we were a very compatible group, and then we did go on to do other things, and especially getting to know Lars Holbeck was really a fun part of that whole thing. And he was the only one that kind of came back the next in 1985. I went back up there again and did. It was part of another actual movie. They'd asked me to, uh, basically uh, lend lend my expertise or my knowledge to it. And but Lars was along on that. He was primarily attracted to it because of a lady that was on. There was a raft, a paddle raft of experts and whatever from Sobek and Oars and all other worldwide, a really stellar crew of paddle rafters. And he was interested in. There were two ladies on there, and so he wanted to make connection, which he did, and it evolved for a period of his life. But one of the interesting imports is after the whole film was done, we had a couple of Chinook sea kayaks and took them down from Telegraph Creek to Wrangell, and it, uh, Lars basically stayed behind. His lady friend Beth Rippons was going to. Uh, she was going to paddle down in a dancer. He put her in one of the. I guess we must have had three Chinooks, but he put her in the front and paddle like 65 miles at night to make the ferry, and he just barely got there. And it's just like, you did what? You just stuffed her in the front of the boat, so she could sleep. Because anyway, it's just a sidebar story of, man, I can't believe that guy. So anyway,
Beth became a legend in her own right for that time. I remember Lars's guidebook really was such an inspiration too. I kind of feel like that was the first like hardcore kayaker guidebook, right? And it really set the standard for every guidebook after. Where it's funny, we were fresh out of high school and we went and we're doing the lower Tuolumne, below the dam, and had camped on this sandy beach and we're just hanging out, loving life, that summer after high school. And this old guy paddles up and like, oh, hey guys. And it ends up being Reg Lake. And just the coolest
yeah,
guy ever, right? I don't know if you remember, but and he's got all these inventions, he's showing us he's got this coffee maker invention that only weighs like 2 ounces so he can take it. And then he has this dry bag invention that's a throw rope, but it's in a dry bag because he's like, you get all that water in your dry bag and it weighs too much when you're carrying it on the board. And we didn't have a book, and so he just gave us one of those books of Pullback Stanley and
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh no, classic. I mean, everything you just said is absolutely true. I mean, it was the model, but those guys just did a lot of painstaking work. But Lars was the magic in the mix, in my mind. And look at all those runs that are in there, and that obviously I mean, a lot of them they did for the first time, and they became classics. And then of course the ones that Reg and Royal and Doug Tompkins did on the the hike-ins, and those of course are, oh gosh, you look at how many of the kids of today just throw a boat on 12 miles, no problem, and off they go hiking over over the Sierras to get to the Upper Kern or X, Y, or Z. And Lars and Chuck, well, they were kind of the competitors of Reg, Doug, and Royal in their own way. They were trying to keep that. Keep it a secret. We don't want to let anybody know. And that was a golden age of California boating. But it still continues. It's just, and to get to see it on through a GoPro's eyes, with all the, I think of Evan Garcia has done a lot up in the California I don't know if they aren't necessarily the foothills or the upper Sierras, basically. It's just, I mean, share this stuff, show how beautiful it is, and hopefully will to me, river conservation is all you're doing is helping out by putting in the bank. I mean, at any point they can come along and suddenly decide it's in the nation's interest to ruin this river, get rid of it. But conservation is just keeping it in its natural form and undammed and yeah. So let's continue that legacy, for centuries forward, I hope. But we shall see.
So that
So.
was it kind of the mid 70s, late 70s when you were working in Yellowstone and kind of just saw the whitewater there?
Um, Actually, I was there as a ranger at seasonal ranger at Old Faithful for 67 and 68. And that was before I was a kayaker. And so basically, to come back to the uh, you know I'm trying to think. I mean, there definitely were people who did the Black Canyon of the Yellowstone. I don't claim any sort of early. I mean, we did an early runs, or we tried to, but kind of the Yellowstone story is we basically put in right below the Grand Canyon. We didn't.
That
We did
Seven
that
Mile
next
Hole.
whole.
You hiked down to Seven
Yeah,
Mile
it's
Hole.
near there. No, we did not. We hiked down from Inspiration Point.
Oh,
There's one
on that
point where
side.
you're out of, yeah, and you can get out of the visibility. So we actually put in above 7 Mile Hole, and then, but we did it with the intention. We were self support, and my whole interest was, this is a fantastic river, very similar to the South Fork of the Salmon here in Idaho. I mean, which is a nice, really great whitewater run, and it certainly has been discovered. But it's certainly a good step above the Middle Fork and whatever. So that's the character of Yellowstone Canyon. Good 5,000-6,000 CFS flows, and it just appealed to me as a fantastic place. And um, I don't honestly remember what I do know that somebody else had run it. I think Andy Lundstrom, who was with me in 80. I think that was our first run, 80 or 81. Um, anyway, he had run it and gotten arrested before, and so anyway, our first trip was Al Lawande, who we just roped in off the street to boat it. Oh, fact is, he didn't even put in with us on the upper portion. But Lawande, Andy Lundstrom, and Cully Erdman. Well, the tale of that episode was we did the whole first day, and uh, anyway, got down to near Hell Roaring Creek, scouted Hell Roaring Creek and the rapid there, and Cully was real concerned about a hole that he thought he was going to get in, and sure enough, like a magnet, he ended up right in the middle of it. But he ended up dislocating his shoulder. And I don't know if he was trying to roll. He did roll out of it, but I think it was in the hole. But severely dislocated his shoulder. Essentially said, "Hey, I've got to, we got to get a helicopter evacuation or whatever." And so I think Al. Anyway, we turned ourselves in and had to hike our loaded boats, classic, still 13-foot boats. I think I may have had a dancer. Maybe I had a haul form still at that point. But anyway, we had to hike them all. Two of us hiked them all out, and that was a bitter taste in our mouth. And then we went before the magistrate court and got fined and et cetera. And anyway, that was that. Well, we went back in 85, and it was Doug and Bob McDougall and Doug Gammons. And anyway, they discovered us around Hell Roaring, and basically they got a helicopter in the air and were chasing after us and whatever. And anyway, we continued on down, and then we got caught there at the end when a ranger who was hiking along the trail basically caught up with us. And
It's an
but
interesting
we
story
did
about that
finish.
guy, right? I forget his name, but yeah, they kept dropping him and he kept trying to catch you. And then when he finally did, he was like, "Oh, I think this is awesome what you guys are doing." But I can't, I'm
Well,
supposed to not.
I don't remember that quote. That may be
Just taking Doug's
the
story, it
the hell
sounded like that guy wasn't.
yeah, that sounded like, well, the helicopter pilot was of that opinion. Yeah,
Okay.
this is awesome, and he was a friend of Bozo Cardoza. He flew helicopters for the Sun Valley heli ski operation, and so he talked to Bozo later on. He said, "God, I thought it was super what they were doing," and blah blah blah. But the ranger that actually arrested us or what have you was none. He was fairly serious. But it evolved, and I mean the comment would be that Yellowstone run is a spectacular and realistically challenging run. It of course has been. AW has tried to get it open in the park. The reasoning behind why the park uh, seemingly established the outlaw or the restrictions on any boating on the most of the rivers and of the in the park is because of fishing. And in 1953 is when they initiated it, and it was all because of fishermen pressure of, oh well, we don't. I mean, of course, nobody was doing it. Nobody was boating it in 1953, but for some, I think it probably wasn't specifically applied to the canyon section or to the Yellowstone, but there were many others that they didn't want boats disturbing their pleasant little fish. But that was the nexus of the whole regulation. And so AW and many of us have said, well, I think it should be open, but it's a me having been a ranger and understanding that most people who come there I don't want to disturb their wilderness experience. In other words, the Yellowstone, when it goes through Hayden Valley, if you were in there with a variety of canoes or any sort of, it would change the image. Fortunately, most of the main Yellowstone in the Black Canyon, there is no way, unless you're in the backcountry, that you'd ever see somebody on that water. So it, in ways, I understand as a visitor, uh, why it's possibly a good thing that you're not seeing a variety of boats and whatever. But and there's also the responsibility. The Park Service feels responsible if you're in there and well, just like with our situation, they, he did have to pay for the helicopter, by the way, and uh, so in any event, it's a conundrum, and I'd love to be able to do it again legally, but I, yeah, sort of understand uh, from a visitor standpoint that the viewscape would be effective. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the Black
anyway.
Canyon is so unique just because it's one of the best runs in the entire country, right? It's definitely one of the best class fives in the entire country. And like you said, once you put in, you're far away from any people. It's just a remote corner of the park. Nobody goes there. There's no overlooks. There's, especially the time of year, you normally do it right later in the year, and it's just empty. So yeah, I think they're really evolving in Yellowstone. I think the game that you guys created and all that animus kind of washed away some, with with Cam, Shawley coming in and everyone. So hopefully they'll make some progress. AW maybe look at like, hey, it's just about the Black Canyon, right? I mean, that's the one that's really just one of the
Yeah,
best, right? And it runs a time of year other stuff isn't running. I've tried to go in there too high and you can't do it, but because the Grand Canyon, it's really not that much whitewater, right? If you put in below, right under the falls, like, and I
oh
don't know if
yeah, well, I
anyone
mean,
had done it since you guys when we did it way back in college or something, and went in like first week of April, 5 foot deep snow, and we hiked to that 7 mile point, on the other side. And that was just this hell slog. It was, I mean, just right to the crotch.
wow,
Every step was crotch deep, and 6 miles, where guys were like, I'm over this, I'm giving up, I'm done.
wow,
We were walking in these moose tracks. We were like trying to follow these moose tracks. And then we crested over to the canyon though, and it was just like this Eden, right? These little geysers, all green, because it was south facing there. And it just lifted the mood. We started hiking down into that paradise, right, of all the color. And there's no one in the park in first week of April, right? There's 0 people anywhere. And we get down there, we're
right.
sitting on a grassy bench, and having a little bite, getting our gear on. And all of a sudden, we hear this, doop, 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 doop. We're like, oh shit, helicopter, helicopter. We're like bumping into each other, trying to find somewhere to hide or something. And then, like 20 feet away, this little geyser just goes up in the air. And we just start cracking up, sitting there in the Grand Canyon, this geyser going off, and we're just laying in the grass in the sun, laughing.
Absolutely. Did you get caught by the helicopter, or did
That
you avoid
wasn't a
that?
helicopter, it was the geyser. That was sounded like a
Oh
helicopter.
my gosh.
But then, so that one was kind of an epic. So we boated all the way down, and then our plan was to take out a mile before the bridge, that separates to the Black Canyon, and just stash
Right.
our boats and come back another day. So we took all of our boats, all our gear, stuffed it in the trees, and buried it under pine needles and stuff, and then hiked out, and then walked down to this little picnic area, and the park's empty that time of year, right? So it's just us sitting there in the sun. And meanwhile, the van we took at 4 a.m. in had broken down up there at the start of the Grand Canyon. So then these people were up there trying to fix the
Whoa.
van and get it going again while we're just sitting in the sun after this run. And a ranger comes up and he's like starting to question us, what are you guys doing? We're like, oh, we're just hiking, and they talked to us a while, and then he left, and he seemed kind of content. But then the van finally got there, and we all jumped in like, "Oh, there's a ranger!" You know, sure we were kind of frantic, and we start driving out of the park, and just a few miles before Gardner, they have a roadblock of like three rangers and make us pull
Oh
into
my
one of
God.
the little little shoulder of the road, and
Yeah. Yeah.
make us
Yeah.
sit there forever. It was like 10, 15 minutes. Then they finally come up and they're looking around. They're like, "You boys been horn hunting?" We're like, "No, I haven't been horn hunting." And he looked around and we didn't have any gear because it was all up there, and they let us go. And
Wow. So that was basically their suspicion was more these guys are horn hunting and they're just they're hiding their stuff in the woods or whatever. Boy, you lucked out on that. And
yeah.
so then did you get back in to get the boat or to boat the Black Canyon?
Well, in the middle of the night, we went in and just got the boats. That one was just for the grand. But my next run on the Black, probably just a year later or something, we were had this amazing run. We'd all done it 5 or 6 times. The group was, I think Adam Majors was there and Brian Fletcher.
Oh yeah.
It was the three of
Right.
us, and we get down and we get done with the last rapid in the, past Knowles Falls, and then there's that last huge one, where you portage the upper
Yes.
part, and we get done
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that,
And that's
and it was probably only 11, but really cold, like a snowing, you do it that time of year. It was just really cold and snowy, and all of a sudden this airplane starts circling, and the airplanes are like, "Oh, whoa," and it's like obviously honed in on us, and we're just these bright kayaks. There's nowhere to go, and you know how it gets. You're not even in the forest there; it's just sagebrush, and there was
yeah.
nothing we could do. And so it circled quite a while and was obviously real interested in us. And then it just went behind this mountain for just a few minutes, and all of a sudden this slot opened. I see this little black slot on the canyon wall, like a couple 100 feet above like a steep scree field. And I was like, "I don't know if there's room, but that looks like maybe a cave. Let's go for it." And we get out and run up to that cave, and it ends up opening into like, about 2 outhouses, maybe room, pretty decent sized cave with this narrow entrance. We get our gear in there and jump in, and then the airplane comes back and can't find us and starts doing, I mean, I've never
Wow.
seen such dramatic moves done in one of those Cestas. It would just dive down and then level off like 100 feet off the water. It seemed like eye level with the cave.
Wow.
It was just shooting down. And so, but then it was only 11, it was only noon. And so we're like, we got to stay here till dark. And we couldn't
Wow.
figure out what to do, and end up getting like, it was when you had my cell phone, but it was like the old flip phone, and it had like 1 bar of battery. And if I like held on to the cave and held it way out, I could get like 1 bar of reception. And it was back the days you'd call your voicemail, And I get this voicemail from Jason Shutt saying, your shuttle driver's in jail. Your car's impounded. They found pot, pills, and bullets in the car, and they have every takeout below Gardner for 20 miles patrolled.
Oh, God. Wow. And so it sounds like a surrender is on the horizon.
Well, so I was like, I'm not sure, we were like, we're waiting until dark still. And well, when we got that message, Adam Major's like, because it was cold. We were doing like these circuit trainings to stay warm, doing jumping jacks, squat, sit ups. Like we had this whole exercise circuit, and we just had elk jerky and some Snickers, but we were just doing that. And we get that message, and Major's like, "I'm done. I'm gonna go get a hot meal in the jail. I'm out of here." It's been like 4 or 5 hours that morning, and he goes down and starts getting his skirt on, and Fletcher and I like talk him. Like Fletcher goes, "You can't give him the satisfaction of catching you, man." And he goes, "Okay." Walks back to the cave. Not 5 minutes later, a ranger comes up on the other side on a horse and gets off
Oh
and is
God.
peeking, looking in the cave. And I was like, barely in the cave, but I could see him so clearly, but it was black, right? You couldn't see in the cave.
God.
So we're just looking at each other, like right in his eyes, but he couldn't see us. And then he rode on, and we ended up sitting there, like I think till it was like 8 o'clock, 7:30 till it got dark enough. It was like 7, 8 hours of just freezing, really freezing, and yeah, and then paddled out all the way to Carbella in the middle of the night till like 1:30 a.m. where our friend had a cabin.
Oh my God. And so they never snagged you in the
Well,
park or whatever.
no. But they had all our stuff, right? Our wallets and everything. So they made us go up to get him.
Oh,
So they're like, we went up there because they had our stuff, and they were got 20 rangers in there, and they're like, you guys got a lot of ticks. You get some ticks, and like looking at our legs to see if they're scraped up and things like that. We just didn't say anything, we were just quiet and just took the ticket. And then they come back with a plea bargain, 10 days in jail, 10 years banned from the park, and a $10,000 fine. We're like, yeah, right.
holy
They didn't even
mackerel.
catch us. They don't have anything. So then, and the discovery was this thick, right? With that whole like 1950s fishing law you talked about, AW's whole
Oh,
proposal, our book,
oh my
Montana
gosh.
Surf, where we told stories of Yellowstone. I mean, this thing was, and and I wish I'd kept this letter. It had like
Yowza.
this stamped letter from the superintendent, like one page, hand signed about you've been whatever. I really wish I'd framed that thing. But so then they came back, $1,500 fine, 1 day in jail, and banned for 3 years. And we're like, no way, I'm not spending a day in jail for this. And then they just never
Yeah.
pressed the case. They figured maybe they'd catch us again, or they just didn't have the evidence, to move forward. So they never did.
So they never took you to a trial date or whatever at all. Wow. No, because as I'm recollecting what you're saying is I think Adam got in touch with me and asked me what our situation had been. And, the second time we basically took it to the district court, which was in Cheyenne. Or we did not want to appear before the magistrate there in Yellowstone. And so, got that waived and sent to the district court, and then the district court passed it out to like I went to trial here in Boise, and as it turned out, the first the federal magistrate here in Boise is a high school classmate of mine. I mean, he's a good friend, basically. And so he recused himself, and then it was passed on to district judge or whatever. And he had time on his hands and listened to the argument. And there were people, and I was the first one to be up before a judge. And basically, he listened to my argument about, I think this is an evolving situation. I have been a ranger up in McKinley, and it used to be that they, give the climbing or giving a prospective climber the nth degree to see whether he qualified. And the evolution on McKinley is, I mean, climbing's climbing, and it's just well, essentially, it was an example of, if experienced people are in front of you, they know what they're doing and they can get the job done. And that is the case here with our run of the Yellowstone, et cetera, et cetera. And he basically listened well, and essentially gave me a $25 fine and a $25 court cost, and that was that. And so I certainly did advise that you will get a more lenient or a more reasoned view of what you've just done, not there at the Yellowstone magistrate's office. And so that's what I advised Adam to do. And it sounds like since they basically did not have proof of, right there, these are the guys, we can identify them, blah, 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 blah. And we saw them on the river. You played it out, but boy, that's an exaggerated, first penalty or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think
So no,
people must
but
still run it. I think people are still running the Black Canyon, just it's all quiet and it's kind of no big deal. But
Yeah, no, I mean, there's been a lot of emphasis on or maybe not camouflage, but you definitely get in there when there's nobody looking, and other things are that the Park Service simply doesn't have the ranger funding to be. I don't know how much this figures in, but to have uh, personnel to be observant. I mean, your point about doing it early in the season, as you did, we did it on the 4th of July, and we paid some kind of note. Oh, excuse me. It just happened that way. I don't know why, but yeah, it was. I think that was the first time, and that was when Cully got flown out. And anyway, and we got to take responsibility for something like what happened to him. You pay the price, and we should have been able to, if he hadn't run away from the river. I mean, it took us 20 minutes to find him because we did first two ran, and then myself and I'm not sure who I was with on the second run. But when I got down there, said Cully dislocated his arm and he's off running around. And well, we would have been able to hit his arm perhaps back in, but it was pretty badly dislocated. And but we've got to accept responsibility for anything like that happening. So. Um, you don't blame the Park Service because you blew it, so to speak.
yeah, so you don't have any idea who ran those first, huh? Because I've never heard who did
Oh,
any of
it was the guys up in Bozeman, and Andy Lundstrom, I think, was involved with it, and what Mike Sklavos? No, he's a Wisconsin boater, but anyway, it was guys in. I mean, ours was probably the third or fourth time that in 1980, maybe just second or third. I don't know, but I do know that it was Bozeman guys, and I'm pretty sure well, I know Andy Lundstrom had done it before because he'd been caught before. So yeah, and yeah, name's just escaping me. There's a guy that I've got a picture of doing enders at the Gallatin get together, which was one of those early rodeos and such. That he was on that trip. He was on the first trip, but yeah.
The
Anyway,
interesting thing of those guys too is, well, Brett Ferry went to work in Montana before any of us moved up there. Maybe sophomore in high school or something, and worked log peeling with some of those guys. In the
huh?
Paradise Valley, and that ended up what all our whole crew moved to Bozeman for that. He really led the way, but part of that's so interesting is they were the first people I've been able to trace that drank booties. So Brett Ferry went
Oh,
there and picked up this booty drinking tradition of putting the beer or the drink in your booty
right.
and drinking it. And so
Yep.
then he brought that back to us and we blew it up, right? Because we put it in the Teton Gravity movies and in the books and what, we just, and on the campfires, right? It just became part of our religion,
Right.
right? That if you swim, you drink a booty. And everyone we talked to and everywhere around the world we went, and it's so crazy that now it's just part of the worldwide culture of
Yeah.
kayaking, and
Yeah.
it came from right there in Gardner.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
As far as
No,
I
I
can
didn't
determine,
know that at all.
as far as I
Yeah.
can trace it
No,
back.
Yeah, that was never one of my. I'm not exactly a strong drinker or whatever, and beer in those days was not my favorite beverage of choice. So I must admit, and also I was ahead of your time, so maybe I just missed it.
Yeah.
So
Well, that wasn't until the night, right? I mean, that was
and
really late 90s.
yeah, okay, well, Sorry I missed it, but not really.
But it's so interesting. I should talk
So
to Andy because I hadn't really known who all was involved in that crew that Brett had
yeah,
gotten.
there. Mike Garcia would probably have a quick recall of. I don't. I'm pretty sure he wasn't on that. But there's some guy that moved to Bozeman, was from the Wisconsin area, who was a good friend of Lundstrom's, and uh, I'm almost certain that he was one of the ones on there, and I think it was only three people, but yeah, Garcia probably be the easiest to contact, and uh, he'd recall the story because I mean, do you know? I don't know how to get hold of Andy Lundstrom at all. I don't think he's still around. Again, Garcia would know, but yeah,
The one he can get in touch with.
in right. By the way, I probably should put a battery pack on this phone. So it showed me that it was 20% a while back. It's not even showing anything right now, but I didn't know, how many other things you wanted to cover or what have you.
Um, we could do that, and I can just come back. But I think we're also probably getting to a good spot. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Only thing I have left really is kind of maybe how kind of your international travels, and then kind of went on that Pakistan trip. Or kind of did you do quite a bit of international stuff in that era, or how did that trip come together?
Um, Kind of, well, definitely, yes. The Pakistan one, that was pretty much I got roped into it. Andy Embeck, who is a somewhat renowned personage in Alaska. He was a doctor up there, and kind of trying to image himself in the style of Blackadar, and definitely, I mean, he was a bona fide climber, uh, a Harvard educated doctor. He somehow wrangled. First, he went to the Navajo reservation and didn't to pay off his medical degree, basically, but he didn't like the Navajo reservation, and so he ended up convincing him that Valdez, Alaska, which was one of the ice climbing meccas of wherever, was a an underprivileged community, and so he ended up there. And then let's just say he had an extremely focused ego. He was his own nature of person, and but I was the perception rep. I got to know him. He did buy boats from us, and I got to know him, and ended up doing a variety of different things. I mean, I had been living in Alaska between 70 and 77, so I knew the territory, and I mean that's where a lot of my boating had been done in those early days. I'd been in and out of in the summers. I was out, uh, well, boating a variety of different things. Well, no, it wasn't that anyway. It's immaterial. But he was the one that put that Pakistan one together. He put it together as a climb and a kayak of the Braldu, which is the river coming out of K2. I mean, it's basically the glacier flows off of K2, and that is the origin of the Braldu River. And it had been attempted years, I think in 78 or 79, by Mike Jones and Manby and Hopkinson and that crew. They had gotten over there with too much water. It was running like 25,000. And Mike Jones died over there. He had a camera on his head. It was, at 25 grand, it's ferocious. And anyway, um, he died, and that was his significance. Well, Ambeck got onto that because of the previous of that attempt, and also Dave Manby did another attempt just by himself at a more reasonable level, but he ended up almost breaking both of his legs or ankles getting out of his boat during his attempt on it. And Beck basically saw it as, hey, this is a stellar place, and so you're going to get, I mean, you're going to get a good sized merit badge for doing that. And so anyway, he basically asked me. I mean, he organized it. There's no question that he organized it, and I got together with my paddling buddies, which was Bo Shelby, Bob McDougall, and Kathy, who became Kathy Shelby at that point, or maybe she was married to Bo at that point, and Andy and myself. And so we were basically the support crew. Andy was a kind of mostly class 4 boater. He'd certainly done class 5s, but he wasn't one of your luminary. The problem is Alaska is not the place to become a luminary because you have no playing. You've got glacial water. You got all this cold. Anyway, had he been outside, perhaps he would have developed more. But we were the security blanket in a sense, and I'd done enough boating with him. Well, anyway, that's how the thing evolved, and he put it together, and we went along as crew, and there was a whole separate climbing crew with uh, Gray Thompson and Jack Tackle, Galen Rowell, his wife, Galen Rowell's wife was along, and Rob Mull, uh, whatever. And Andy was anticipating doing both, the climb and the river. But and we went over, and we had a major adventure over there. And um, as far as the boating, it was challenging, and we only had like 2 to 3 thousand. We were there in the early season, and that was our reason for being there early. And there are all sorts of side stories of, oh God, well, anyway, but the river itself, um, for the most part, it was a technical run, and uh, I'm glad we went. I mean, the immensity of the experience was a month in Pakistan, and it at that time was very, oh, you felt like you were going back into the 8th century for the most part. Mud, basically adobe buildings with you know, the livestock on the lower level, the people living in the middle, and the grain storage on the top. And it was very eye opening, and was definitely glad that I went. But sick, all of us got sick, and as I say, it was challenging, and but none of us really had. We didn't have any bad experiences of long swims, or I don't think there were any swims on that run. And I can't, I don't remember how. I'm sure we must have portaged some of the stuff. There were sieves galore, uh, but and the only person that I know has been back over there is Annie Ol Sarasolsis. Just within about the last probably 5 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, he went back
That's that
over.
same stretch
Uh,
that the guys have been running there, the roadside. That's just massive.
no, that's more the Indus.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
portion of the Indus.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
on the way. We drove by there, and that's more by Nanga Parbat and whatever. But yeah, that stuff is, yeah, we were looking down at that and going, whoa. So what they're doing with that section, but to do the brawl do is Anniol's the only one. I have seen a video. He's posted a video of that. But as far as like world traveling, it more. I mean, I've been to New Zealand and of course Chile. The brawl do. Um, and then many places Canada and Alaska and whatever, but that's local or sort of. And I'm missing some other. Oh, Norway. Spent time over there. It's interesting because and even Iceland, I nearly went to with a British group, but this was in 80, probably in 84, 85. It would have been, and I look at that stuff today. I mean, Doug Tompkins and I went to Norway, and when we went there, they said, "Oh, there's only about 10 whitewater kayakers in the country." And this was 1990. This was right before he started doing his stuff down, and it was literally at the point of his split from Esprit and going to Chile and doing his grand work down there. But when we were in Norway, it was just two of us just we had another guy that was a friend of Doug's that was driving us around, and I look at what's being done today, and I just go, whoa, we did the simple stuff. I mean, we did the South Fork of the Payette equivalent or something like that. But we ran around for 3 weeks, dude, looking at different places, and I just see the evolution. I mean, Chile. You look down there. I mean, I was down there before in the in '79, and look what it is today. I mean, all the evolution. I mean, that's as far as like my experience within the whitewater world. There are many aspects of it that I've seen just blossom, and not to say that I sowed the seed or whatever, but it sure looked a lot different when I was there in those days, and like Nepal. God, which also I've gone to a couple of times, and it just it's like wow, wow. It industries are there. So many people have been introduced to that a river is for something else than hydropower, and and the beauties of the Iceland setting or the Norway setting. Man, it's great to see how the sport has grown, and the youth of today have definitely taken the ring and run far with it. So
Let's see. Yeah, Iceland, Norway, those are Iceland. We went there and first trip left all our kayaks, with these because there was no kayak. I mean, there was this kayak club that
yeah,
we had
no,
gotten in
no,
touch with, and they were just
yeah,
doing the class 3, and they were like, "Well, there's just one guy who might help you," and we found this one kid who was excited about the waterfalls and stuff, and so we did, 2 weeks or whatever, driving all
yeah.
around the island. And then we left our kayaks and we came back the next year, and now they had a crew of like 5 of them that called themselves KFCs, the Crazy Fucking Creekers. But and that
Oh,
like blossomed the
jeez.
seed, and like now there were locals running it.
Yeah, no, no, to see it. And you think of Costa Rica too. I was down there in the '80s, and it just how different. I mean, to see this blossoming of our nascent industry, or it's not an industry, but just a sport of choice, and it's pretty cool. So it's interesting to reflect on it, but it's also interesting to see what the present day paintbrush is doing with this landscape, and it's with technology to record it and whatever, and not to mention, I mean, drone stuff. I mean, reflecting on the Stikine, 2 helicopters in the air. Annual Sarah Solstice goes in there with his drone, and I think he did there's a short video that I think he was in there for 4 or 5 days, and he's hiking to the up 2,000 feet to the rim, and flying his drone around and sitting on the edge of space, and or flying, because there's no question he knows the route on the rapid. He knows the water. That's not even in his mind. He's enjoying the place and enjoying, I mean, the goats that are in there, and the majesty of that canyon section. I mean, it is a provincial park now, but my God, I hope all of these new or these boaters that are going up there as a proving ground or whatever are, firmly looking or firmly absorbing the place, because as I say, that's why I go places and photograph, and I just it I felt he did a very nice job with the video that he produced, of that, of as a sense of place, and especially with the hiking and also camping in places that maybe one person could camp. But golly, I mean, having just watched Dane's last video of the Stikine, I I hope that I mean he did 6 runs in 7 days, meaning they're basically doing a run through. They're not even camping at Wolf Track Beach, and wow, I mean mine is. I mean, it is wonderful water, but appreciate the place and spend time in it, especially if you've never done it before. Do not just follow me. Boom, and off you go. So anyway, my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, that's great. I was inspired seeing Benny Marr run Site Zeb a few years ago. That was
Yes, yes,
that
yes.
was
I was
impressive.
very inspired. I mean, I got to be honest. When we looked at it in '81, there was a good challenging line in there, and I think there's a line in the movie. He said, I think it's Lars. He said, "Well, something about I've seen a lot of whitewater, and I see there's a route possible in there, but I'm not going to run it." And there's one version that I've got of the original one that he says that. I don't know if it made it in the final cut, but it and that's we looked long and hard at it, but by you know 33 years I think is when Benny, between our time and Benny's, and God, more power to them. And they're still, I mean, basically they're not running the top part of it, but they are putting in. I mean, they are putting in a much higher or higher now. There seems to have been a change, because where they get out into it, I mean, it's still really good wild water, but there's some stuff in there that eliminates it. And I mean, obviously Nuri has run it, and Annie Oles run it, and Gerd, I think, has run it, and but in general, it's still got a lot of respect, and but those people have dialed it. The ones that have run it have done a good job with it, and that's today's eye and talent. And I mean, it's not an irrational run for sure, but you gotta know where you're supposed to be and have to be, and you know, off you go. I mean, I always looked at V Drive. I've never run that either, and it was always slamming into the wall. And around 2000 or 2001, the rocks changed, or the channel changed, so that it actually looks like, I mean, it's still a ferocious shot, but and everything folds in on you. And I'm always amazed when they come through without getting just ass over tea kettle, doing a tail spin and whatever. And uh, but yeah, things do change, and so. By the way, my earphones have just said they're battery low,
I think we're
so
done.
I'm.
That last question got I mean, obviously, kayak and whitewater has given us just so much in life, right? So much, the whole life, kind of, but also lose a lot of people,
Absolutely.
right? You see a lot of loss. I don't know, any kind of those
I
losses that stick with you. That's sure.
I don't. Yeah, I don't really think. I mean, well, the loss. I mean, it's like a loss of people like Lars, but his was not on the river. It was, of cancer, and I'm trying to. Well, there's no question. But I didn't know them as well. But Chuck, um,
Kern,
who am I? What
Kern,
coming?
Chuck
Yes, of
Kern.
course.
Yeah.
yeah, Chuck Kern and Dougal Bremer, uh, also in the sort of the same situation, but of just getting pins and whatever. But when you say a lot, I would say there's a lot less than I would have expected. I mean, given the considerations of how dangerous, like both Chuck and Dougal, sieves and just you know uh, there it's tough. Uh, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of dangerous places out there, and I am amazed at how many people have escaped. And things like on the Clark Fork of the Yellowstone. I mean, there's one guy that has sieved out twice and flushed out the other side, and Charlie somebody or other. Anyway, the stories. No, one. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I reflect on the North Fork, and that is a case where I certainly knew it before anybody had died up there. And now I think there are either 7 or 9 have died up there. And it's just, but it stretching people's limits and education ahead of time would have saved some of those people. In other words, they were a bit in over their head on the North Fork. And then there's been one death on the Stikine, which I'm grateful for. I mean, I'm grateful it's not more. It should not have been him, Jeff West, who died up there.
He
And,
was solo. He
you
was
know,
going for solo in a day, right? When Jeff
yes,
died.
the solo in a day, but he didn't have. I mean, these kids today, all the ones we previously mentioned, are doing laps. I mean, just like I said, Dane just did 6 laps on within 7 days. Well, their knowledge, their abilities, their whatever. Not just. I mean, Jeff was a very competent paddler. He'd really done it 2 days before when he went in there with Doug Ammons, and Doug basically got helicoptered out, and so Jeff went the rest of the way by himself, and then 2 days later he puts on for a solo one day, and then that he somehow just didn't make his role. I think, there's nothing in there that's going to pin him per se, but the cataracts, or no, the creature crafts were in there at the same time, and Mark Kramer was the one that found him below Site Z. And I know he didn't try Site Z, but yeah, it's just be careful and you know learn as much as you can, and don't just follow me. That's not the road to success. Is You better have your package well oiled, and whatever your abilities have to be there, or don't be there running it. And that will guard against. But there's a lot of places. If you get flushed on the keen, you're going to go a ways. I mean, it's not the place to rescue. It's not a fun place to rescue, but it isn't that hard. Anyway, talent level is so high these days. I go for it, I guess. So
Yeah. Yeah, that in water level, yeah, well, like Grossman on the South Salmon, right? Another one where
yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
no one's the strongest guy there is, right? I mean, the guy is so strong,
Yeah,
but with his
no,
son.
no, I Yeah, no, I mean, I went to his memorial service, and of course, exactly when it happened, I knew about it within minutes or whatever, as soon as it got out. And absolutely just what you said, the strongest guy on the planet, well, not exactly, but
Pretty much.
strongest in a kayak. There's no question that this guy, Jimmy, come on, he can get out of any hole. But yeah, I have been in the hole that he got flushed out of, and basically lucked out and back surfed out of it, and I think it was like 8.5 feet on the up there then. And Bo Shelby went into it. We both were paddling, talking to one another, and we came around the corner, and there was Greyhound Hole, and it was massive. and we just he went into it and was so heavy and heavily loaded boat, he came up 20 yards downstream, out of the bottom of the hole. It wasn't a thrash job or anything, but hey, the luck of the draw. The hydraulics are running the way they're running, and Jimmy, as near as I can tell, basically got caught in that hole and came out of his boat in the hole, and it's real significant. But I've seen Jimmy on ocean surfing and I've seen him in action hands paddling the North Fork. No way that I would have ever expected that. And good of you to remind me, because he was I've known him since he was 15, and it would, yeah, just really really sad, uh the whole thing. But
Class
yes,
5, it's, you
there
can
are
do
guests
everything
on.
right
Yeah.
in a Class 5 rapid and still. Like, what's so weird, right? Like a Class 5, you can do everything right and still have disaster, and you can also just throw a log in the top, do everything wrong, and float right out the bottom and roll up. It's so weird.
And I've seen that many times, but we want less and less of the of the close calls, the really close, where rescues and has to be done. So
Thanks
yeah,
so much, Rob. It's a
no,
pleasure speaking with you.
yeah, well, yeah, interesting conversation, and well, where does this air? Or I mean, in other words, what's the link to? Well, you should send me the link to the podcast of just in general. So
Yeah, I will. So I
yeah,
haven't. I'm just kind of gathering up a few right now. So then when I put out, I have some. So I got Tyler Brott, Ben Stooksbury, yourself. So I'm gonna release those and
yeah,
then do another round.
wow, good. That's
Yeah,
a little that's some generational hopscotching or whatever.
I figure
Although
each
I
thing I
mean,
should get.
Yeah, Tyler is not exactly. I met him when he was a graduate from World Class Academy down there. And by the way, I think my earphones just went out. So are you hearing
I can
me?
still hear you all right. It's just a little different.
Okay, yeah, it's coming off in the on the phone or whatever. Um, but anyway, no, Tyler, just a young whippersnapper out there, wanting to conquer the world. But and then Ben is older than Tyler for certain, and then I'm definitely older than them, older than all of them, I think. So
What's amazing
yeah,
about Ben is how he's just kept it going, right? I mean, kept these
yeah.
expeditions going over like 3 decades now.
Yeah, no, he definitely has, and he's imaginative. I mean, I remember him when he was just starting the No Big Names,
Yes.
videos or what have you.
No.
No big names here, blah blah blah. And what the hell? He's a big name. I mean, obviously he was working towards that. Well, he accomplished it, and no, and he's an imaginative. Uh, expedition planner. I mean, that he
Oh,
is the full package, and but he's gotten himself into some situations down there in like, is it Ecuador or Colombia or whatever? I mean, some of those rivers that he's just gotten into. I watched a video not too long ago of him, of those guys getting out of one of those places, and and not to mention the interactions with you know basically bandits or military or whatever, and chopping him. Oh God, what did he do? He hit him or chopped himself up with a machete, or how the hell, his knee. Anyway, he's out there. He's pushing limits for sure.
what a drive to just keep it going.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's the zest at the bottom of all of us as whitewater boaters, and until something else comes along like a family or whatever, it's sticks with you. It's got your addiction. So,
Yeah, there's nothing
okay,
quite like
well,
how in the moment you are in a rapid, right? No matter you're skiing, mountain biking, none of those other sports are that much of that flow state or whatever they call it when you're just so focused, and then nothing can do that like a
yeah,
river.
yeah, no question. Um, and it here I am at the approaching the end of a life, and it's been totally dominated by once I got onto whitewater, that's been my guiding light. I mean, up until the last few years, but still it was the focus and the direction and the purpose and whatever of how one man's life is led, and you're talking about other people who it certainly is the same way. But I'm glad, and it's been a good life, and so no regrets. Didn't have a family, but it wasn't part and parcel to where I was motivated. So it's yeah, good to have arrived at this other end and still alive. So,
And I think of our time on this earth of just like, this is our time in heaven. Like, what heaven's going to be better than this?
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, in one part, it's a total, like that yin yang symbol applies to everything, I feel like where it's half good, half bad, no matter what decision you make, no matter all of it, right? It's like this perfectly balanced
Right.
heaven. Like, you can never have one more or the other, but gosh, I don't know what could be more heavenly than these mountains and rivers and oceans we
Yeah.
have here.
No, it's the life we've chosen or happened into, and it was very rewarding. And the bottom line for me is just the massive amount of beautiful country or settings or whatever you want, nature. That's my cathedral. There's no question about that. And I think most river runners or other outdoors people, uh, that's our worshiping arena, is just beauty and all that. Uh, anyway, and I as I said, just come off this San Juan trip, simple trip, saved it till I was older. Awfully glad I got on with a great crew of, I mention like Nancy Wiley and Joe Pulliam and Kent Ford and
Wow.
Steve Scarborough. Geez, I mean, all long-term river people, and it was such a beautiful setting. And beautiful clear days. It's just and the beautiful canyon walls, and that's nirvana. To be in that setting with good people. So
And maybe it's that we're going searching for that feeling in the rapid, but what we really find is the nature, all the friendships you make, that's really what you come out with, maybe.
yeah, yeah, no, it's a good crew and a good place. So, well, I'll leave it at that, and you know, it. I probably don't exactly want to look at myself too much, when it comes out, but I'll try. Uh, I think we've had a good conversation and touch base on some interesting points for sure. So thanks
For
for
sure.
contacting me.
It's history, right? 50 years down the road,
Yeah,
people need to know
yeah,
because it was
no.
all pre-internet too, right? So it's not like any of the stuff the
Oh
generations
God.
before 2005 even did doesn't even exist.
Oh, I mean, when I think of all I just go down the basement and pull out all the topo maps that I had to buy for XYZ river or if it was some foreign rivers. And anyway, now they've got Google Earth. I mean, I go over and I look at the Braldu on Google Earth or the Stikine or any of these rivers. And it's just like, what are these guys? Anyway, that's technology, and it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, the internet. Wow. I think right now, in the political scenery or whatever, it's not been a good thing over the years of how our connection and you know well, basically, how if you want to go down a rabbit hole, yeah, boy, there's one right over there. I'm going to jump in. So that's the world we live in today, and it's far, far, far different than the one that I was kayaking in, and in my 20s. That's for sure. So
Maybe that's the yin yang too, right? For every good you get, you have to have an equal and
yeah.
opposite. Right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Look at like AI now, right? It's like amazing
Oh,
helpfulness,
yeah.
but then there's going to be an amazing back end to it as well.
Yeah, no, and as you said, I mean, I try to keep up with technology, but it's a challenge, and I'm a little concerned about this new OS 18 for the Apple atmosphere or ecosystem, and all that AI. I mean, I'm having trouble enough with I like to dictate my emails or whatever's or tweets or not I don't do any I do no social media, no tweets, no nothing like that. But when it does auto dictation, it's scrambling it so that I don't even recognize it. I mean, literally, and they're understandable. It would, okay, you don't need to have this many words in what you're just saying. It's already doing that. And it's like, I didn't ask you to do that. I want to speak like I speak, or say it with the number of words that I have. You just spell them right. And anymore, every single, especially a text that I put out, I have to go back and reread it. And there's 5, 6 corrections to be made, words left out, words not heard correctly, blah, 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 blah. And I've been using dictation for 5 or 6 years, and it should know my speech is what I'm saying, and that should be a very simple um, situation. But anyway, uh, I hate to see. I have not downloaded iOS 18 yet, and I just kind of hate to see because I know it's going to be Mr. Autocorrect on anything we construct as a text, email, whatever, X filing, I guess. So,
Yeah,
oh
big
well.
implication. I will enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll cross
Okie doke.
paths again sometime. Look you up if I'm in
Yeah.
Boise.
Yeah, no, I've still got the helmet that I think I got from you. I mean, I still use it, the
Nice.
WSRI.
Yeah,
So
nice.
a- anyway,
Yeah,
the
I
old
still see
days
them
or
all out
whatever.
there. They still have Lucas's signature embossed under the brim. Have you
Is
noticed
that
that
right?
under the brim it has Lucas's
N-
signature in the plastic?
No, I hadn't noticed that. I'll check it out. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, good to note. So anyway, well, and also if you have any uh, we didn't touch on, I don't know exactly what there is to talk about on rodeos, but they were certainly in the time and their place, and they certainly did further. And then just the business side of like my experiences with perception, but all of those entrepreneurs of and having been on with Joe Pulliam and Steve Scarborough, who of course are Dagger, and Joe's almost with Jackson, but that was a golden age there in the 80s for me, and 80s and 90s, and all the entrepreneurial spirit from Warner to, I mean, just look at every company had a core entrepreneur and leading spirit in it. And those are some interesting subjects and whatever's. And I mean, because you look around now and it's everybody's been sold, or I mean, didn't WSRI, isn't that who now owns those molds,
NRS.
or NRS. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. So, but that's at least in the group or in the company. But you look at where Perception and Dagger and they're off with Pelican or in Canada, and not none of that. This is my inspiration, and this is my company, and the spirit is expressed through our product. So
That
yeah,
was such an
and
amazing, like, what, 10, 12 year period where kayaks essentially went from a cigar, just no, like the dancer, to not much
yep,
different than what's out today, like that whole thing. It was
yeah,
so, like, if you didn't get the new boat the next year, you were ancient, and then, like, it ended and now it has just little
yeah.
teeny changes since then.
No, they're very, I mean, 10 years of creek boats or whatever. I mean, I think, well, of course, it seems like Jackson and Piranha are the only two still kind of in the game as far as design. And Jackson has, is it the Narvana, and now the clutch is, it seems like, I mean, to watch Dane on the Stikine in a clutch was pretty impressive. I mean, that's a playboat. I mean, he was surfing, there is so much in there that if you put your mind to it, as he did, that is playful. And of course, the kick flips or the what, there's so much that wasn't part and parcel to my day and age because, whatever. And I'm so impressed with upsweep and rocker and front paddling and defect correction or whatever, and but I mean, I look at Scott Lingern on some of these things, and he'll throw a back brace. I mean, long boats predicted that kind of behavior. I mean, you could not turn. Oh, having just done in a 14-foot boat at San Juan, I found myself, pushing a low brace, low back brace, just to get the thing to turn a little bit, and none of that in today's paddling. It's up there in front, and they're skipping away from stuff. So it's good to see that evolution has reached a good maturity. So okay,
Mhm.
well, better let you go here, and
All right, that's
thanks for
perfect.
the
Two
invite.
hours
And
on the spot.
oh wow, you're right, 1:59:33 on my timer. So anyway, okay, well, till later then.
All right, take care, Ab.
How do I? Okay, I guess I'm gonna leave you.